Hello everyone, I am Sarah from Sarah's Prismatic Musings. Thank you for checking this video out today. I know it's been a minute and I'm in my alien green from Roswell, New Mexico. My very best friend Cindy Rhodes, the artist, you can check out her video up here, I'll post a link, made these earrings for me when my husband and I visited her and her partner in Roswell, New Mexico, and we went to do, I think it was called like Skywalk, and there was all this black light. So she made me these earrings so my earrings would glow and my shoes glowed. We got, oh, this is actually the Center of Space and Time, the research center, this bracelet. Well, actually, I think it was from the spacewalk, but anyway, we had so much fun in Roswell. And a few weeks ago, so for 2023, let me start from the beginning. I'm just really excited. I love Roswell. So we just had so much fun. But let me back up about what this video is about. This video is about ranking all 8 of Sarah Addison Allen's books. So she's written 7 full-length books and 1 novella. That's a prequel actually to this book right here. So let me get into it. I'm going to start from 8 and work to number 1, my number 1 favorite book. Now, Sarah Addison Allen, I discovered her when I was working at Borders Books and Music back in, the early 2000s. And I won the book for doing so well with my sales or customer service, whatever. I don't remember what it was. I'm sure it had something to do with customer service as I worked in the cafe, and those were the perks. We got to pick books from the promotional bin, and we also could check out books and read them for free. So anyway, I am starting with my least favorite book, and this book actually came in, I was generous, and I rated it 2 stars, but actually thinking back to it and writing up what I actually thought of the book, I'm actually think that's too generous. Let me take you to the cover. So this is her novella, and it's the prequel to Lost Lake. It's called Waking Kate, and it's super short, but it's super short. It took me like no time at all. Basically, it's to sell her book First Frost. That's the majority of the content. I had already read First Frost. All I can tell you is that it's an unnecessary prequel. I don't know if Sarah Addison Allen signed a contract that she had to put out X number of books, but this book just missed the mark. It was unnecessary to the story of Lost Lake. It really did not add anything, and I just finished reading it and going, what did I read? And if you read the reviews for, a lot of people say the same thing. What did I just read? Why did I waste my time? That was unnecessary, and I agree. So I was very generous when I rated it, that I gave it 2 stars. Really, I gave it 2 stars because Sarah wrote it, and I love her books. She's my favorite author. And so I typically love her books. Now, if you don't like magical realism, you will not like her books. And if you don't like ensemble casts, lots of stories that intertwine and interweave and like connect all the characters together, you won't like this book. There's a lot of characters in all of her books, and there's a common thread that threads them together. And I think that's really cool, and I really like that. So I'm drawn to that, but I know that there's some people who don't enjoy that. Now the next book, this was also one of my lowest rated. I was generous again, and I gave this book a 3-star rating, and it's actually First Frost. And this is the sequel to Garden Spells, which I love Garden Spells, but this is the cover for First Frost. And this was about 10 years after Garden Spells. I just felt like a lot of the charm and the magical realism and what made the world of the Waverly Sisters so magical was really lacking in this book. Again, it just felt like it was rushed, or it was something that Sarah had to put together because her editors told her to, or the publishing house, or she needed some money. Again, I did not feel that it added anything to the first novel. It actually fell really flat to me, and I was happy when the story was finished. Now, most of her books are like 288 to like 294 pages. Super quick, easy reads. You can read them in an afternoon. The sweet spot for me for books is 300 to 350 pages. I really don't like reading books that are more than 400 pages. I'll read like a 400-page book if it's on Kindle, because for some reason I seem to read Kindle books a lot faster, or if it's on Audible, and then I can do a longer book because I can listen to it like at 2 times the speed or 1.5 times the speed and just fly through it. But I don't like a book to sit down and read a book that's over 400 pages. I just don't have the patience for it. So the first 2 books, it's ironic, right, that I got them on Kindle, and I just really, really did not enjoy the books. I mean, Waking Kate, I did not. It felt like a waste of time and just silly. It did not add anything. And then First Frost felt lackluster. Now we're getting into 3.5 stars that I rated, and that would go for Lost Lake. Now, I just couldn't connect to the protagonist in this book. I'll read the inside slip. It says, the first time E.B. Pym saw Lost Lake, it was on a picture postcard, just an old photo and a few words on a small square of heavy stock. But when she saw it, she knew she was seeing her future. That was half a lifetime ago. Now Lost Lake is about to slip into Evie's past. Her husband George is long past. Most of her demanding extended family are gone. All that's left is a once charming collection of lakeside cabins succumbing to the southern Georgia heat and damp, and an assortment of faithful misfits drawn back to Lost Lake year after year by their own unspoken dreams and desires. It's a lot, but it's not enough to keep Evie from calling this her final summer at the lake and relinquishing Lost Lake to a developer with cash in hand until one last chance at family knocks on her door. Lost Lake is where Kate Ferris spent her last best summer at the age of 12 before she learned of loneliness and heartbreak and loss. Now she's all too familiar with those things, but she knows about hope too, thanks to her resilient daughter, Devin, and her own willingness to start moving forward. Perhaps at Lost Lake, her little girl can cling to her own childhood for just a little longer, and maybe Kate herself can rediscover something that slipped through her fingers so long ago. One after another, people find their way to Lost Lake looking for something that they weren't sure they needed in the first place. Love, closure, a second chance, peace, a mystery solved, a heart mended. Can they find what they needed before it's too late? At once atmospheric and enchanting, Lost Lake shows Sarah Addison Allen at her finest, illuminating the secret longings and the everyday magic that waits to be discovered in the unlikeliest of places. So most of Sarah's protagonists usually are in their late 20s, early 30s, and it has to do with families, usually daughters and mothers. This book is about a daughter and mother, obviously Devin and her mother, Kate. And then it's also about Kate's and her mother, and then her sister, who is Kate's aunt, Evie. So this is about complicated families that have falling outs, and the reason why certain family members leave family units, and complicated relationships. So this actually starts, the first chapter is in Paris, France in 1962. And throughout the whole book, it kind of goes between present day Georgia and the past. So this book was okay. It was just very similar to a lot of her other books. I just could not relate to either one of the protagonists, really. The one, let's see, Kate and her daughter Devin. I mean, I'm not a mom, I'm not a single mom, and I found it interesting that, especially after reading Waking Kate and then reading this, that Kate fell apart so utterly, completely at her husband's death, when in Waking Kate, she talks about how basically she's codependent. It was a codependent relationship, and she wanted to save her husband. And she felt like she gave and gave and gave and gave, and he was never happy. He was never satisfied. And she kind of felt done. And then she finds out he dies. So he's dead. And then we find out in this story that she does what every woman in her family does when they lose their husband, is they fall apart. And they basically fall asleep for a year. And they just sleepwalk through life. And in this book, when it goes to present day, her mother-in-law wants her and her daughter to move in and wants to control her life and yada, yada, yada. And she's going to go along with it, but she wants to go to Lost Lake and she wants to see it one more time. And her daughter's 8 in this book. And so I can't relate to allowing people to dictate and control your life or having a child. I mean, I'm child free, so, you know, Evie and her husband's story of how they came about purchasing Lost Lake was cool, but also horrible. And reading about their narcissistic family dynamics was really difficult, especially Evie's sister, which was Kate's mom, she was kind of pretty messed up. So it was kind of frustrating to hear about that, but it's real life. You know, families let greed and feeling entitled to other people's things usually rip them apart, and that's what happened between Evie and Kate's mother. So I don't want to give too much away because I know I already gave a lot away, especially in Waking Kate. Basically gave everything away, but I did not give much away in Lost Lake. It was just okay for me. I would not start with Waking Kate, First Frost, or Lost Lake if you are starting with reading Sarah Addison Allen. They were just okay. And again, I read them in order of when the books came out. This is one of the last books, and I was just kind of like, every single one of her books is the same. The next listing and I gave this also 3.5 stars. This is The Peach Keeper, and it says, it's the dubious distinction of 30-year-old Willa Jackson to hail from a fine old Southern family of means that met with financial ruin generations ago. The Blue Ridge Madam, built by Willa's great-great-grandfather and once the finest home in Walls of Water, North Carolina, has stood for years as a monument to misfortune and scandal. Willa has lately learned that an old classmate, socialite Paxton Osgood, has restored the house to its former glory with plans to turn it into a top-flight inn. But when a skeleton is found buried beneath the property's lone peach tree, long-kept secrets come to light, accompanied by a spat of strange occurrences throughout the town. Thrust together in an unlikely friendship united by full-blooded mystery, Willa and Paxton must confront the passions and betrayals that once found their families and uncover the truths that have transcended time to touch the hearts of the living. I only gave this 3.5 stars because the book took a while for me to get into. The first half was painful and felt too similar to her first 2 books, which was Garden Spells and The Sugar Queen. But by the second half of the book, I was totally enthralled. So the second half of the book was like a solid 4 stars. So I gave this a 3.5 stars rating. This book deals with really heavy topics about poverty, sexual assault, but it also deals with friendship and community, people coming together, strong female bonds, friendship. So in most of these books, there's a mystery, and it has to do with family secrets. Younger generations trying to like figure that out, discover the secrets. and that the older generations want buried. So there's, again, always going to be a romantic element, there's always going to be a mystery, and there's always going to be some form of magical realism. Now, I don't remember what the magical realism is in The Peach Keeper. I don't think there's really any magical realism in this. This is more kind of like just a mystery of finding out whose bones those are under the tree. Where did they come from? Why was a peach tree planted where peach trees do not grow? I think ghosts are kind of a theme, that the house is haunted. So other than the ghost aspect and the mystery, there's no like wallpaper that changes colors with people's moods like in another book, or apple trees that show your future. Yeah, in Lost Lake, I don't really remember what the magical realism part was. Well, it was an alligator that was communicating with Devin, the little girl. That was the magical realism part of Lost Lake. The Peach Keeper it's the mystery and the ghost story. There's a woman who runs a coffee shop, and she makes really amazing coffees and bake pastries. So there's always like also like a food element. There's always somebody who bakes, and like the baking just like brings people together or unlocks a mystery, or is magical in some way. So yeah, that's this book. It's okay, nothing great. Now, this book is the newest book that she's written. It's called Other Birds, and I think this one came out in, 2022. I picked this up when we were in Asheville, North Carolina. I loved it. In the little local bookstore in Asheville, she has signed copies of all of her books. Now, I'd already had most of her books except this one, so I picked this one up, the signed copy. And this is actually my highest rated book. I actually wrote it 4.5 stars, but why I have it listed as number 4 and not number 1 is because I've only read this book one time, and my number 1 and 2 I read twice. This book I loved so much. This book takes place in an island town in South Carolina, and part of the ensemble cast are these bluebirds. They're fictionalized. They're called Delawisps in the book, and they're this bright blue birds, and they just like to take things and collect things from people. And I love the birds. I loved the island town that this story takes place in. I loved all of the characters. I loved the way that they were connected. I loved the mystery. And there was a secondary character in here, Charlotte, who I absolutely loved, who grew up in Vermont in a cult, and she escaped at the age of 16. And I just really loved the slow unfurling of her story. And her story actually captivated me more than, I would say, who the protagonist is, which is Zoe Hennessy, who is a young girl who moved to the Delawisps because her father had bought her mother the apartment there, and her mother died on the day that her father and her mother's divorce was finalized. So the Delawisps apartment was kept for the daughter Zoe when she came of age, and basically had to move out because her stepmother did not want her in the house anymore. But so it was okay. The other characters were okay, but I really was fascinated with Charlotte, and also just the apartment. The apartment complex took on a life of its own and kind of attracted people who maybe were or were not family, but needed like found family. And there's a reclusive author in here, and a reclusive just person, and a lot of misunderstandings, and a lot of people hiding from their past, trying to escape their past, or, you know, trying to be somebody else. So I just really, really, really loved Charlotte because she works as an artist, giving henna tattoos, and she collects witch balls. And it's just a really, you know, there's some heavy topics, obviously, with Charlotte growing up in an abusive cult, and Zoe feeling like she never was wanted, especially by her father. And her mother's story unfolds, and her mother's story is really sad. And there's a lot of sadness in this book, but a lot of hope. And this book just really, really, really spoke to me. And I loved the mystery, and I loved just how everything played out. So I am surprised I put this at 4, but you'll see from here on out, like, really, these are all 4-star ratings. So it was really kind of difficult for me on how to place these, because they're just all, from here on out, from Other Birds for going forward, they're all amazing. All right, so my next favorite, so this is my 3rd favorite, is The Girl Who Chased the Moon. And so this says, Emily Benedict has come to Mulberry, North Carolina, hoping to solve at least some of the riddles surrounding her mother's life. But the moment Emily enters the house where her mother grew up and meets the grandfather she never knew, she realizes that mysteries aren't solved in Mulberry, they're a way of life. Here are rooms where the wallpaper changes to suit your mood, unexplained lights skip across the yard at midnight, and a neighbor, Julia Winterson, bakes hope in the form of cakes, not only wishing to satisfy the town's sweet tooth, but also dreaming of rekindling the love she fears might be lost forever. Can a hummingbird cake really bring back a lost love? Is there really a ghost dancing in Emily's backyard? The answers are never what you expect, but in this town of lovable misfits, the unexpected fits right in. So this protagonist, Emily, is a lot younger than the other protagonists. Her mother has just passed away. I think Emily is like 16 or 17, and she's never met her grandfather, and I'm pretty sure it was like an accident. Her mother, you know, had not been sick. And so she'd never met her grandfather, had never been to the town where her mother grew up, really knows nothing about her mother's history. Her mother ended up starting a school for young girls, all about, you know, volunteering and helping out, like building schools in third world countries, things like that. And so her mother was all about doing good and helping out people, and having her daughter focus on being charitable person, not a popular person. It was all about grades and doing good for the community is how Emily was raised by her mother. But when she gets to meet her grandfather is really reclusive and won't really talk to her, and the people all seem to kind of like shrink away from her, and she feels really exiled, and she doesn't know why. So she wants to learn about her mother's past, and she wants to learn about the Mulberry lights, and she wants to solve all these mysteries. And there's, like I said, the wallpaper that changes color based on feelings, or changes, not color, but like the design and everything to kind of match the mood of the inhabitant. And we find out that the mother was a mean girl, and the town blames her for a tragedy that happened to this family. She basically ran away from her hometown to reinvent herself, to become a better person, to kind of let what happened kind of like rest. So I enjoyed the sweet forbidden romance between Emily and Wynne, the magical realism in the book, the wallpaper, the town. I liked the mystery. I liked the resolution as well. I just liked the whole story and how it unfolded. I was engaged from the beginning till the end. This one was a solid 4-star book. Let's see how many pages. This is only 265 pages, and then it's really cool. It talks about the different full moons. So it says a year of full moons in the back because it's about the girl who chased the moon. So I think that's really cute. So it's like the full moon in January is the full wolf moon. The full moon in February is the full snow moon. So then it talks about, you know, what that means with the full moon. And then we do have a reader's guide where there's questions for Sarah Addison Allen about the book. And then Julia is the resident baker of this town, and each town has one. And then there's recipes. So we have the hummingbird cake, we have southern peach pound cake, we have Milky Way cake, which I am hoping to start baking again and using gluten-free and dairy-free options, because I've gone gluten-free and sugar-free. And I've had some gluten-free and sugar-free pastries at, it's called Good Cakes in Bisbee. And then also when we were in Los Angeles, I had some amazing gluten-free, like vegan food, sugar-free, and it was so good. And I'm just really like, okay, I want to start baking so I can make us bread and I can make us, you know, sweets that I can eat. I was doing really strict, like really clean keto, where I wasn't eating really any carbs. I was keeping it low, and I really should do that. And I'm gonna try to stick to that because I was pre-diabetic a few years ago. Now I'm at the borderline. I've got it under control, but I really want to keep out of the pre-diabetic range. So cutting your carbs and cutting sugar obviously is like very important if you are pre-diabetic and you want to stay, you know, out of that range. You can reverse that by cutting out carbs and sugar. But, you know, I think a treat every now and then, especially if I make it and I know what ingredients are going in it. I've been doing a lot of research on foods and stuff, and I found out that, like, I have always cooked with olive oil. That's always what I've cooked with. But now I cook with olive oil, avocado oil, ghee. Ghee is amazing. Ghee is lactose free, so it's butter and it tastes like butter and it's amazing, but you don't have lactose. So that's great if you're lactose intolerant. I recommend everyone try ghee. If I cook and I can use like maple syrup, sugar, or just leave the sweeteners out and use like ghee instead of butter, I use gluten-free flour, then I can make this stuff and hopefully it tastes delicious. Yeah, maybe I'll try some of these recipes, but I think that's really cool. I like that about this book where we have the recipes and we have some other information. You know, it's kind of fun. It makes it fun. Other Birds, The Peach Keeper, and Lost Lake did not have anything like that. Let me check The Peach Keeper. And I'm sure it also has to do maybe with the book. The Peach Keeper has just like topics for discussion, so no recipes or anything. Now we're getting to the number 2 spot. I have Garden Spells. All right, so it says, the Waverleys have always been a curious family endowed with peculiar gifts that make them outsiders even in their hometown of Bascom, North Carolina. Even their garden has a reputation, famous for its feisty apple tree that bears prophetic fruit and its edible flowers, imbued with special powers. Generations of Waverleys tended this garden. Their history was in the soil, but so were their futures. A successful caterer, Claire Waverly prepares dishes made with her mystical plants. From the nasturtiums, I can't say that, sorry, that aid in keeping secrets, and the pansies that make children thoughtful, to the snapdragons intended to discourage the attentions of her amorous neighbor. Meanwhile, her elderly cousin Evanel is known for distributing unexpected gifts whose uses become uncannily clear. They are the last of the Waverleys, except for Claire's rebellious sister Sydney, who fled Bascom the moment she could, abandoning Claire as their own mother had years before. When Sydney suddenly returns home with a young daughter of her own, Claire's quiet life is turned upside down, along with a protective boundary she has so carefully constructed around her heart. Together again in the house they grew up in, Sydney takes stock of all she left behind as Claire struggles to heal the wounds of the past. And soon the sisters realize they must deal with their common legacy if they are ever to feel at home in Bascom or with each other. Enchanting and heartfelt, this captivating novel is sure to cast a spell with a style all its own. Now this book is 286, and then we have, it's really cute, it says from the Waverly Kitchen Journal. So it's like very kitchen witch. We have Angelica will shape its meaning to your need, but it is particularly good for calming hyper children at your table. So it gives a few different 4 pages about like different herbs and what they can do. So like violet, a wonderful finish to a meal, induces calm, brings on happiness, and always assures a good night's sleep. So this book was just so charming. I loved the sisters who are like night and day, totally opposite. Claire, who likes security and she likes being a Waverly, she's embraced it. It provided her much success as a caterer. The apple tree is amazing. Sydney is the one who left and then comes back. It's just interesting watching their dynamic. I just really love this book. Reading it a second time, it was amazing. I love the apple tree. I love the ambience. Going to Asheville and seeing Asheville and just how magical Asheville feels. Even though this takes place in a fictional town of Bascom, I really feel like it's Asheville that Sarah's talking about. That's where she's from. That's where she grew up. And Asheville is super magical. There's lots of greenery, lots of trees, lots of herbs. The houses are so charming and cute. I could not help but like looking around and seeing Bascom, North Carolina, in Asheville, you know, or seeing Asheville and Bascom, whichever way you want to say it. You know, this book is like an homage to Asheville and the community. It's like a small town. It has that small town feel where, you know, you can't live down or you can't live up to the family name. Everybody knows your family. Everyone knows what you're known for, what your family's known for, and you're kind of like kept in that box, right? So that's why Sydney wanted to leave. She wanted to be able to be someone else, right? And not be held back or down or up to her family, right? So coming from a small town, I totally understand that. This book is so magical and I just loved it. Yes, the characters can be a little infuriating because, especially Claire, she's so stuck in her ways and she doesn't like change and she wants everything to be the same. But rereading this for the second time, I loved it. I still loved it. So that is why it's in the number 2 spot. And that's why Other Birds is not in the number 2 spot, because otherwise it would have been flipped. But I'll wait a few years and read Other Birds again and see if I still feel that way. And if I do, you know, the order might change. But because I read this book twice and I loved it twice, I put this as number 2. And we get to the number 1 book. This is The Sugar Queen. I got this one, and this book is actually, I bought this one recently because I could not find my original copy. I did find it after I had already purchased this, but I'm going to keep this one. The little advanced reader that I got is in the giveaway pile. I'm trying to go through my books. I have duplicates of some books, so I'm trying to get rid of those. I do that like if I lose a favorite book or I can't find it, I purchase it, and then of course if I find it. But I like the hardcover copy, so I'm going to keep this one because I got, actually, I think I was given both Garden Spells and the Sugar Queen for doing a good job at Borders, because this is also an advanced reader. This book is amazing. I love it. So this is actually her second book. Garden Spells was her first book, but this book like has my heart. I just totally relate to Josie and how it feels oppressive to live in a small town, and small towns are not forgiving. They know who your family is, and so you are guilty or infamous or whatever, depending on your family, right? Your family's reputation is your reputation, whether that's good or bad or whatever. There's that box, you stay in that box. And then also you're not forgiven, like for the sins that you committed as a child or going through phases or whatever. Like you are held to that. Like if you were a brat as a child, you're seen as a brat. Even if you're totally different, that's who you were and that's who you are, and you're not really allowed to grow or change or become another person. Or as Josie, you feel like you have to make up for it. So you feel guilt and you feel shame and you feel like, okay, well, I have to make it up to all of these people. And that's what Josie does in this book. Let me read the back. Josie Serini is sure of three things. Winter is her favorite season. She's a sorry excuse for a Southern belle, and sweets are best eaten in the privacy of her closet. For while Josie has settled into an uneventful life in her mother's house, her one consolation is the sugary treats and paperback romances she escapes to each night, until she finds her closet harboring Della Lee Baker, a local waitress who is one part nemesis and two parts fairy godmother. With Della Lee's tough love, Josie's narrow existence quickly expands. She even bonds with Chloe Finley, a young woman who is hounded by books that inexplicably appear when she needs them, and who has a close connection to Josie's longtime crush. Soon Josie is living in a world where the color red has startling powers, and passion can make eggs fry in their cartons. And that's just for starters. Brimming with warmth, wit, and a sprinkling of magic, here is a spellbinding tale of friendship, love, and the enchanting possibilities of every new day. I really, really love, I mean, a woman who has books that just appear, books that she needs to read, but it's kind of frustrating because the woman who books just appear, she is frustrated by the books appearing and hates it and wants it to start. But I'm like, that is so cool. I want books that I need to read to just appear. I would love that magic ability. Like that just sounds so cool. And I just loved everything about this book. I just loved the magical realism in this. And I can't talk too much more about the book because I don't want to give anything away. This book is 276 pages. And this, I don't know if, you know, because this is an advanced reading copy, I don't know if in this Sugar Queen has any recipes or anything else in the back of the book. If anyone has read this, let me know if there's any add-ons, like, you know, recipes or anything else like that, like there's in the other books, because there's definitely, you know, baking and things like that in this book as well. There's always like a food element. Sarah Addison Allen is definitely a foodie, definitely loves her sweets, and there's always like books. Obviously she loves books, she's a writer, so I love that part. I love that there's like food and there's books and Southern charm and small towns, and we can romanticize the small towns, which is fun to do in a book. I have no problem with that, except I know the truth. I was raised in a small town. They're really not that charming. It's really not. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It's good because, you know, nobody can really like con you or pull one over on you because, like I said, everybody knows everybody's family, everybody knows everybody's business, everybody knows what kind of person you are, everybody knows everything. So it offers a sense of protection, but then at the same time, it's a box that keeps you in that box, and you can't really grow, and you can't really necessarily become maybe the person you want to become. If you get to move out of your small town and live in a city and have some, be kind of anonymous, it allows you to make mistakes or to try, be the person maybe you want to be. So I like that these themes are explored. I think it's really cool. Oh, and I forgot, I wanted to read a quote because I absolutely love this quote, and it really, when I was reading it, this is from Garden Spells. This book, this is about Evanel, who gives people things. And I really relate to this as a tarot reader. So it says, this is from page 262 to 263. So this is Evanel, because I gave him something that led him to the instructor instead of back to James, like he hoped. So naturally, Fred thinks he has to spend the rest of his life with that teacher. He cracks me up sometimes. He's soon going to realize that he makes his own decisions. All I do is give people things. What they do with them is out of my hands. He even asked if I would sneak him an apple from your tree tonight, as if that would tell him what to do. So this is so true. When I give tarot readings, it's just a snippet. It's a possibility. It's what you do with that information is how it's going to turn out. It's not set in stone. So Evanel would give people things, and then they would need it, and it would often lead to romance or something important happening in the person's life. So this character had broken up with his boyfriend, and he was hoping Evanel would give him something that would get him back with his boyfriend, but she gave him something that led him to this other person. And so now he takes it that he has to be with this person, but that's his choice. So it's just like a tarot reading. If a tarot reader tells you something, that's one probability, that's one possibility, especially with the way that your life's going at that moment. But it's not written in stone. Like if you make a different decision, or you change one little habit, then that outcome may change or could possibly change. So it's like, okay, well, if a tarot reader tells you like, I'm sorry, you're not going to get your dream job, but then you go out and you take a class or a workshop and you're like, no, I'm going to get that job. And you take the workshop, you take the class, whatever, and maybe you take an internship there. Maybe you won't get the job right away, but you can take steps. You can still make the outcome that you want happen. We choose what we want to happen in our life. And I think that there's many possibilities and many fates, right, for people. That's why I don't believe in soulmates and twin flames. I don't believe that mythology that we're not full human beings and that we need somebody else to complete us. I definitely don't subscribe to that. I think that we are full human beings, and I just think that having a partner in life is just part of our human nature, and having that companionship. But I don't think it's like the end all be all. I don't think that's really healthy. But we just rewatched What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, and that movie is so beautiful. And I'm like, Robin Williams and his wife were twin. They could talk. I think they even said twin flames or soulmates or something. And I'm like, is that where that concept came from? Because that movie came out in the 90s, and I know it's based on a book. And I'm like, is that the person who got this whole like new age concept going? I don't know. But I thought it was interesting, and in that story, and I agree with a lot of the concepts in that book, especially that when you pass on, where you end up, it really has to do with like your mentality and what you believe and your mental emotional space. I definitely believe that, but there are some things that obviously I don't agree with in the book and how things are portrayed, especially with the twin flames. But it's still a beautiful movie, and Robin Williams was just such a beautiful soul. And yeah, it was great seeing his energy on the screen. And we watched Good Will Hunting, and he was amazing in that as well. Like, I would say those are two of my like favorite movies. Just beautiful, like well written movies. So watch those two movies, and I finished reading all of Sarah Addison Allen books. And if you've read any of her books, let me know what you thought, which one was your favorite, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.